All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Kaleidoscope Jungle Journeys Jury Roundtable. Blah, the tongue twister of that all. Of course, the seven of you make up a majority of the jury. Two are not currently in attendance. If they do opt to join late, then we will admit them, and hopefully they can participate in this as well. First off, I would like to thank you all for choosing Kaleidoscope, for choosing our game to play. This has been a very fun season to spectate and to host. I may not have been the most attentive to all that was going on or the most whatever. But from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for all the work that you put in, all the attention that you decided to give to this game and are continuing to do as you've made time, set aside time for your day to attend this jury roundtable. I will be one of your hosts. I'm Jacob. I'm on prod, and I'm a former winner of the series. So who better than someone who won the majority of the jury votes his season to host this roundtable? But I'm not alone. Instead, we actually have the reigning champ here as well. We got homeboy William Keane who took it last season. William, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me. Super excited to be here. And I've been keeping up with the peripheral, what's going on. So I'm really excited to delve in and hear your thoughts about everything.
Of course, we have a bit of an agenda. Obviously, we have the final two. We have Mike and Renique. One of them on Wednesday will be crowned the new Kaleidoscope winner. Will join me, William, and three others in the Kaleidoscope winner circle. And obviously, we want to make sure that this conversation is as productive, as civil, as respectful to one another as possible. Me and William will be facilitating this conversation, but we're not going to be the ones at the forefront of this. Ultimately, this is your guys' conversation. This is your jury vote. You guys will be the ones making the decision as to who of Mike or Ren end up winning this game. So you all will be doing a majority of the talking. But making transitions, me and William will be the ones kind of doing that to make sure we're not focusing too much on one specific person and we're spreading attention at least relatively equally. We can have anyone who wants to speak start us off if they would like to talk about either Mike or Ren or their thoughts on the final two altogether.
So I feel like me and Brooke come from a specifically interesting place with Ren, because I feel like a lot of people in this jury chat are saying they don't know what Ren did and weren't close to Ren. I feel like me and Brooke and Sanam as well were kind of close to Ren. Um, Me and Brooke swapped to Ren's tribe, and then got to merge. So we got some extra time with her, and I think during that tribe swap, she opened up to us a little bit more. But I think as much as I know about her game, that is not equal to everybody else. So like I feel like I have a better grasp on what she's done and what she did for the part I was there. But I don't think everybody can say the same thing. And that is good for me because I saw that, but it's not great as a total, as a like whole. That most of this jury is like, or this jury is like, I don't know really what she did.
Um, I would be inclined to agree, especially considering I had a lot of one-on-one conversations with Ren and, hearing from everyone else, and they'll be like, oh, Ren didn't talk to me. Ren didn't do this. Ren didn't do that. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, but she and I talked every day for hours on end, right? And I got to see the game from her perspective, and I don't know if everyone else really got to see that other than Esme and Sanam to a lesser extent. Especially considering Esme and I like were in a chat with her from the jump when we swapped. We were in a chat with her after the merge. We had another chat with Santa minute, so like we got to see a lot more of the process. And for me, something that Rin was able to do that I don't think anybody else really was able to do was minimize her threat level, but not appear weak. And that's kind of insane when you look at the people that are on this jury, right? Outside of maybe one or two people, I would say we were all front facing threats, people that were either controlling the game or were seen as a big threat towards the end of the game. And we all got taken out, other than maybe one or two exceptions, because we were doing that. And I think Renique saw that. She perceived that and she said, I'm just going to let these people take each other out because I'm not going to be the target. And it kind of felt very Sandra in that way of like, hey, it's not me. I'm gonna stay in, I'm gonna make it another round. And if these people perceive me as weak, right, because they're not taking out the weak people, they're taking out the bigger threats. That's really impressive. And it shows me her perception is insane, especially compared to what I feel like people may see her as, which is a coaster. I don't think she coasted at all. But I mean, also, I was voted out like several rounds ago, so maybe I'm wrong.
I think I kind of represent the in between because I was in some of the chats with her, and I did not see the like extent of her gameplay that Brooke and Esme did. I definitely don't think she was coasting. I know that there's more. So what I want to hear at the jury vote from Ren specifically is, what were the moves? I know that I've caught bits and pieces of it, and I'm seeing it as it's forming a nice puzzle. But I want to know at what point. I mean, my first game was literally right before this. I was her, and I remember telling my BL at one point, my BLDR, they think they're managing me, and if that's what's going to get me to the next round, I'll let it slide for now. And I know she was making some of those moves behind the scenes. So I think what I want to see from her is kind of hearing more about the part I didn't see, because what I would like to see from a winner is the logic behind the strategy. And I know that it's there, and I just want to understand it better. And it's funny because, Brooke, you said, downplaying but not seeming weak. There was one point immediately after Ren did not talk to me one-on-one. The most I saw from her was in the messenger chat. And ironically, I was saying that's what sent you home over her, was because we thought she'd just be a number. And then immediately she turned and flipped on Nick. And now I know that that was a decision she made. And I think it was a smart one. Nick was a huge threat. But I think that while I was still in the game, she just seemed like she was chilling. And then the one time I reached out to her was after Nick vote. I'm like, hey, like, I'm pretty much the reason you stayed. You voted out someone who's my ally, and Nick and I tried really hard to downplay our relationship, and I think we successfully did that for the most part, but at a certain point when we've been together the whole time, everyone knows we're close. But she literally was like, well, I mean, I worked with you when it worked for me. And then I never heard from her again, and then I got voted out. So to me, it was icky. And not in a, like, game sense, in a personal sense. I'm like, you don't have to talk to me and be besties, but when I hear you're talking to these people every single day, I want to know what part of those relationships was strategic and what part is I only have so much time to dedicate. I don't think it's inherently wrong. I think as a player, of course, I'm like, I'm so cool. Why didn't you want me? But like, as someone who's now sitting on the jury, I understand there's logic to it. I want to understand that more. And the flip of that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think I'm noticing that I also talked to Ren a lot less than Brooke did. I think a lot of my conversations were with like in one-on-one calls with Brooke and Ren, and then we would relay information back to you, Sanam, or like vice versa, something like that. Where it's like I feel like me and you, Sanam, we didn't have many one-on-one calls, but we had one-on-one calls, and we and it's like, but also like I had given schedules of like, hey, I'm gonna be busy throughout these times, and like I don't know if Ren ever gave anybody some sort of that, like a schedule of like I'm not gonna be around at this time, but I think I had like one, maybe two one-on-one private calls with Ren, and I think I had a lot more like group chat calls, and I got to know Ren's a little bit better. But I feel like also in those group chat calls, it would be me and Brooke yapping because we're just yappers. I mean, look at us, we're yapping throughout this whole shit too. And then Sanam as well.
I mean,
I think you're right. I think there's a difference.
I mean, I agree. I don't want to take up all the time talking about Ren. I'm just gonna say this. I feel like I talk to her more than anybody else in the game. And I will say I do think that is a knock a little bit because I got voted out. I got 11, right? Everyone else on this jury made it further in the game than I did. And if I'm the one that talked to you the most, that does say a little bit of something about maybe you should have talked to people more. But to me, I mean, I can't deny the fact that it worked. I mean, she made it all the way to the end. She has won competitions. She has consistently performed well, even the ones she didn't win for the most part. Um, and I think the thing that she's really good at is making sure that the target isn't on her. It's really impressive. And I think what she did was just attach herself to people who were bigger threats than her. She floated beautifully. And I know we're going to say the same thing when we talk about Mike, because Mike kind of did the same thing in terms of like floating between pairs and floating between groups. But in the end, who feels like they got burned by Renique? I think maybe Nick, and that'd be about it. I don't think I got burned by Renique. I got burned by Mike.
Me, but I'm not salty about it. She did a good job. I don't think she floated. I think she swam. She found those currents and she swam.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm going to give you, I think I have a good anecdote here about my perspective in the game about Ren and Mike. My thoughts were, if the jury is like, the jury would be, if with being strategic, would be more negative on like thinking like who's making the biggest moves. be low on Ren, but if the jury was being who they like the most, they'd be high on Mike. Low on Ren, high on Mike. But if they're being emotional, they'd be high on Mike, low on Ren, and that they're both two of the most volatile in terms of jury odds from my in-game perspective, people in the game. Yeah. Basically they're both they're both the opposites of the extreme core, where Mike was a lot of visible action, but coming off as very obviously scummy and pissing people off. Where Ren was fairly didn't have a lot of visible action, but she didn't have a lot of it but she wasn't but she was fairly well liked when she was around.
Sorry.
I think my bestie is gonna go so he can talk before he has to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll talk a little bit.
Yeah, hi. So I probably spoke to Renique every day since around about Brooke leaving. I reached out to her and it wasn't that easy to begin with, but finally kind of got through. I identified her as like, well, people saying they can't speak to her. I kind of back my social game. So if I can get through to her, you know, we can kind of get something going. We did get something going. So I'd say we probably had like, I don't know, we didn't VC every day, but we probably had maybe 5 VCs over the time, which was pretty good. And we got to know each other and made each other laugh and just hung out a bit. And very early on, I kind of, because I'm, you know, you guys know what I'm like, I kind of like, in the end, just kind of say what I'm seeing. And I kind of said to her, oh, you know, there is a bit of a perception that you're a bit unavailable. I would have said something like that. And she kind of said, yeah, she knows. And like, she was in two minds about it. In part, she was like, maybe I should do more. It was, yeah, that's right. Because it was before Touchy Subjects I started speaking to her, I remember, because then when Touchy Subjects was going to come out, because I've seen it before, it's her first game, but I've seen what happens in Touchy Subjects, I was like, are you ready for the results? You know, they're going to be something. Ren is the kind of player that they're going to be something for her. And so kind of after that, she was kind of like, well, maybe I should do more, but at the same time I have, and I think someone's touched on this, I have been just reaching out to certain people, and I'm not really trying to hold all those conversations. So Ren knew what she was doing. I think I wouldn't, as someone with that kind of that level of access, you know, a little bit of access, I think it's being a bit kind to suggest that it was a full strategic play right from the start to kind of drift. I think part of it was kind of like not knowing how to reach out and sorry, when I say drift, I'm trying to compliment, like, kind of be under the radar and let other people do their thing. I don't think she was really doing that right from the start. I think she realized once people started getting hit, and as Brooke said, what was the order? Brooke got hit, then Esme and Cam, then Jeff, then me. I think at that stage, by the time she got to me and did flip, which I think I understand to be her first big move, she was realizing how she was playing, and I think that's probably the credit to her. I mean, funnily enough, I would say that my kind of personal point of view is that when she flipped on me, that was the first time I had considered and kind of said out loud that I might, for my game, not go with Sanam to final 2. And really what I actually said to Ren, and she was the only person I said it to, was I really don't think I could beat Sanam. And I kind of stand by that. But I definitely didn't say I could beat everyone else, because that just is not something that I would have said.
That's what you get for flipping on me, Nick.
Sorry?
I mean,
That's what you get for flipping on me.
No, I know. I didn't even flip on you, but I was just kind of like I was comfortable with her. No, I know. But it was just that time that the first thought came out, and I said, like, kind of like, so, you know, we can go to the end, but it I hadn't even crystallized the plan yet. It wasn't like that, man. And I wasn't planning on moving on Sanam, but it was just ironic that the first time I can't, like what I actually did was indicate to Ren how close I was feeling with her, and she took that as the signal to precipitate my demise.
I think I'm gonna push back against one thing that you said, Nick. I don't think her voting you out was her first big move, because to me, her first big move, she managed to flip an entire tribe in a 30-minute phone call like that. Because the entire first day after the swap, Esme and I were vibing with Wesley. We kind of agreed that if we went to Inquisition, we were going to vote out Ren. It was going to be pretty easy. Esme and I, we can agree with that. We had talked about it, and that was what we were going to do. And then the next day, we win that challenge. We're relaxed and having a good time. Renique slides into my DMs and slides into Esme's DMs. We have a conversation with her, and suddenly we are fully on Team Renique. Like,
I
she
will say
flipped a
that
tribe.
felt a little less strategic to me, and just that I had the same amount of conversations with Leslie and Ren at that point. It didn't feel like she was doing this whole big thing to flip. It felt like, okay, it feels like these two are not going to vote together, and it feels like we will if we have to go. So who would I rather have? And I guess that would be Ren. Like, I didn't really fully care. I think I had talked to Ren more, and then I think what was the final nail in the coffin was apparently the stuff that went down during that immunity challenge, which again was not a Ren move. That was a Wesley kind of messing up.
And
And
for
and
the
and
record, I'm
and
not
and
saying
you
it
didn't get
was
to a vote
like,
anyway. End of the
Yeah.
day.
I'm not saying it was this like strategic mastermind move. I don't think she was like, oh, I'm on the bottom of the triad. Let me quickly flip it up and all that. I think it's impressive that she was able to socially maneuver pieces that quickly. I don't think it's like this grandstand, let me party and throw out two idols in Inquisition and all this mess. I think it was just a little thing. I'm going to talk to these two people. And in the process of talking to those two people, she got them on her side like that. And I think that's something she was able
Part of
to
the
do. And she
reason,
may not have had
oh, wait, no.
conversations
So the
with
reason I
everyone.
was down to vote Wesley was because I was heading into work and I only had a few minutes left. So I had to pre-write a name. Ren wasn't online at that time. So it wasn't that it wasn't really that to me that Ren was flipped me. It was that I didn't have a conversation with Ren yet, and I was heading into an 4-hour, 5-hour work day where I was not going to be able to check my phone because I was dealing with a fire. And Wesley had come in and given me, okay, I can vote Renique. So I voted Ren in case we went to tribal because I was not going to be able to go to that tribal if we went. So for me, that was self-preservation. It wasn't, and then when Ren came up, it was like, okay, now that I've actually got a chance to talk to both of them, now that I'm like, it wasn't that she flipped me, it was that I had to do this because I didn't want to go the fuck home if we lost.
But I'm not trying to like be nice to myself here, but I'm saying the fact that we knew there was going to be an hour before tribal would happen if we lost.
Mhm.
The fact that Ren didn't reach out to you guys at all about the vote in advance.
I think that it was also that like I was going to be away like for a chunk of time before tribal as well, and I couldn't be online at there. So it was like I had clocked in basically at like 5, 4 something. I got back home at like 1.
But
So like
my thought the process was tribal should be discussed during the 25-hour period before challenge results if we don't have any time to prepare. And my interpretation, which was not quite right, we had no time with this instant tribal after results, but there was a bit of an hour, I think, for the actual trial that lost. So the fact that like during that period she wasn't discussing might not be the greatest look, but this is pre-jury stuff, so it does not huge.
Yeah.
It's not as important here.
But I just don't see it as
It's not what
as impressive, I think, as Brooke does, because it feels like, at least to me, it was just I had to do what I had to do in that scenario, and then I got a chance to talk with her, and it wasn't
Yeah,
really
my point was
she
just
like
more. It also looks kind of bad that she didn't message you at all before that, though.
it wasn't
I
that she
mean,
really
well, I
swayed
also
me.
want to just push back against that, though. Are we holding Sanam accountable for going to the woods for 2 days on premiere night and not reaching out to anybody during a 48-hour challenge? Like, sometimes you can't be online and you can't message. I'm not going to hold that against somebody. I'm going to take into account what they did do while they were here. And what she did do while she was here, to me, was impressive. We didn't end up going to tribal. Her being here didn't matter. Like, her not being here didn't end up mattering. She didn't go home. And she stuck around and she made the connections to put herself in a better position. So if we went to tribal at the next challenge, it wasn't going to be her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's impressive.
I was just going from my perspective for that. Like,
Same.
Okay, so
Because
I
like
was
I don't
trying
think
to
I'm
like give
saying
up.
that it's
I'm
like
not done with that,
bad
but
that
like
she
giving an
wasn't
alternate view.
around. I'm saying that like I think it isn't, to me, it just feels like, oh, I was able to get a chance to talk with her a little bit. and I had like at that point, then it was the same amount of information and conversation I was having with Wesley, and no offense, Wesley, it was less dry.
I feel like this is one of those times where there's a cross between like social and strategic choices. Like, I'm going to build up social relationships because I want social relationships, but like that's what you can leverage later as a strategic dynamic as well. So I think, like, to Brooke's point, it was an absolutely brilliant move, whether it was social and strategic. And to Esme's point, it wasn't inherently like necessarily strategic on Ren's side, but it did set her up for later success.
All right.
Like,
So
the game is both.
I just want to make sure that I'm gathering everything correctly about generally some of the criticisms, some of the pros going into FTC about Renique. Very likable, a very amicable presence towards a lot of people. It seems as though no one's particularly holding any ill will towards anything Renique was deploying during the game. I guess the biggest question is how much strategic acumen did Renique display during her time here? How intentional were some of these moves? We've highlighted specifically maybe her participation in Nick H's vote off specifically, but if there are any other instances where she may have made any maneuvers, that's obviously going to be a little bit contentious as a topic. But obviously, we've talked about Brooke. We talked about Renique quite a lot. How about we move on to Mike and compare some of you guys' thoughts and perceptions of Mike in game and how they may have changed or been reaffirmed to you as you stepped into the jury.
I had a whole lot less time with Mike because we met at merge. So I feel like my perception on Mike is very different than a lot of other people's because I was out merge pretty quickly. I did not get to know Mike that well, but we did get to talk and I did get some fun times with him. We played Roblox together. We were on calls together late at night, and those were fun. I feel like I ended up actually calling Mike one-on-one more than I called Ren, which is saying something because I was with Mike for less time.
I mean, I'm not going to talk much about Mike. All I'm going to say is this. Um, I would wager at least half of the jury got backstabbed by Mike to some degree. I'm not going to say if it's more or less than that because I don't know every little detail of what happened after I got voted out. But what I will say is I was the first person that Mike stabbed in the back. Mike was working with me. Mike was in an alliance with me. We had a chat, and he voted me out. I'm not going to hold that against him, but what I am going to hold against him is that to me, and this is the same criticism I had for Scott when Scott was in the game, it felt a lot like the personal conversations that we had were fake and that they were used for leverage. Because to me, I don't feel like the personal conversations that I had with Max were fake. Max voted me out, right? But I feel like Max and I, when we connected on a personal level, it was personal and it felt real. Same thing with Pam. I don't feel that way about Mike. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that way. That's just me. It felt fake. And it is harder for me to want to vote for Mike because I feel like Renique and Mike did the same things from my perspective. Mike was just a little more brutal about it. And I don't know if are we rewarding brutal or are we going to reward something else? I don't know. That's just my perspective.
So I guess I can speak on Mike a little bit. So me and Mike and Cam had a group early on, like since day one, day two, pretty much, where for our original group, and it felt like he wanted to be friends outside of the game, but he was going to use anything I gave to him to his advantage, kind of like what Brooke was saying. It felt like very leverageable. But I also think that is some of the smartest gameplay you can do sometimes, especially if we're all letting it happen. I mean, I felt like we all had this idea of him being the villain at one point, and he got voted the villain, but we kept him in the game. He stuck around. He, like, you know what I mean? It was the person that, Mike, he's the bad guy. We'll get him out eventually. Oh, he'll get out eventually. Oh, he'll eventually have the votes and it'll fall on him one day. That's where I feel like the narrative is for him sometimes. But he was able to turn that into where he could play both sides. He was able to play both sides, and no one called him on it. None of us did. Did any of us ever say, Mike, you are playing the fucking middle, man?
I will say one of the things that Mike benefited from.
You know what I
think
mean?
everyone was planning on him going at Final Five. That was a universal plan across the board.
And he duped us. He did.
But
he
here's the
outplayed
problem.
us.
I would say the issue is that he tried to advertise that, and I agree with that he was very smart with doing that. I will say my issue is more production on this side, where the detailed step-by-step instructions deliberately skip steps that pre-existed in prior seasons. Specifically, the fact that idols could nullify with snaking, which was not in the rules, but it was in prior seasons, so it's not quite a twist. That annoyed me a bit.
I mean, the
not
twist
his
is
fault.
not on
It's not worth
trial
considering here. I just felt like mentioning that.
To borrow a quote from Edge of Extinction, the twist is not on trial here. Okay, did the snake bite you in the butt? Yeah, it did. Okay, it sucks. I'm sorry you're here.
I'm not complaining about myself. I'm complaining that
I'm not. I'm not saying you are.
I'm not saying referring to myself. I'm just referring to the twist was poorly designed.
I don't think the twist was poorly designed. I think it was told to us at the beginning of the season, and I think
they did not actually correctly tell us that they lied. They deliberately skipped a step in the step-by-step instruction.
I mean, you can be bitter all you want. At the end of the day, Mike's still in the game, and you're not.
Next.
I'm sorry.
Next.
Hey, say hey, person who like ranted about me at Final 5 about a Final 14 round. Pot kettle your loud.
I mean, that's why I didn't want to work with you, and that's why I was happy when you got
pointed out 50 million things you were mad at me about. Mentioned me more times than anyone else in Ponderosa, and you're the one complaining about me being fucking a white, being bitter.
I mean, I wasn't bitter for me. I was bitter for Ren. You didn't do anything to me until you voted me out. And quite frankly, you being here, I'm happy. I don't think you deserve to be at the end. I'm not gonna continue this back and forth because, quite frankly, that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about the other two.
Okay, I got it.
Continue this later.
I was just pointing out that one, he did use it smartly, but I was just also making the side comment that it was interesting that I was just making that side comment. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm gonna shift the conversation a little bit.
I was actually trying to flatter him by pointing out that he did have hidden information that he tried to advantage.
Despite Mike flipping and taking over, I never really felt that personally victimized by Mike. Because me and Mike were calling a lot in those. Me and Mike were fucking calling a lot during those split tribal round. And I was like, I thought I was telling him I'm probably going home, even though I didn't know if I was going to go home because I didn't know if Max had an idol or whatnot. But if I knew if Max pulled something out, I was going home. So I was telling Mike, and I wanted to work with Mike still because I felt and that's a bonus to his game that he just voted out my closest ally, and I still wanted to work with him. That immediately after backstabbing me, I didn't think it was him. I thought it was Nick, maybe because Brooke incorrectly called out Nick publicly. So I went in thinking that, okay, well, Nick has to be one of the people that flipped. And I had given Mike that benefit of the doubt and then still talked with him after I found out that after he was honest with me about where he voted. And I think that's a really big up to his game that, again, I knew he took one of my allies out. He did it right in front of my face and he lied to the group beforehand. But after that, I was still talking with him and still had a good relationship with him and still wanted to move forward with him and maybe even go to the final four with him. That is a huge up to him.
And I think even Cam said it himself. I mean, he wanted to out him as well. And I mean, he didn't because he needed him for his game. That's what Mike was able to do. He made it seem like we all needed him in the game, even though we may have not wanted him in the game.
Well, I wanted him in the game, but I wanted him in the game despite my best judgment. I don't think it made sense for me to have him in despite him. I think it's a very different coin, but it's still very good. I think it was that despite him literally just lying to my face, I was like, it's Mike, I don't fucking care.
Well, I mean, in show of hands, how many people feel like Mike used you? I just feel like it's an important question. Do you feel like Mike used you? Because I think Mike used me.
He was legit. I think he was more sincere with me than I saw it in game, but he is inherently someone who is, well, everyone in Survivor is using everyone at any given point. is
Here, here.
you can be nice to people, but you can be friends. You can genuinely want to make friends, but the fundamental point, the goal of the game is to win. For me, for Mike, I don't want him to say he wasn't using people. I want him to say, motherfuckers, I used all of you correctly.
I think my thing with Mike, and like I love Mike as a person. I definitely feel like he used me to get where he's at, and like I'm not bitter about it. Like as a person, I'm like, come on, bro. But like as a juror, I'm like, you know what? Well done. I think that there were definitely times where Mike would get really panicky, and I think that part of that's jaded by my conversations with him and what Scott put in Ponderosa about like there were times where he wasn't sure where Mike was the strategic choice, but also I would say there were a lot of times Mike kind of played poor baby me. I'm worried in order to like have other people reassure him. Because I think Wesley, you and Mike were both really good at getting information without giving it at first. I think both of you got called on that in different ways at some point. You started working with me and giving me more information. Mike never did, and I just stopped giving him info, but he was still getting it elsewhere. So I think to some extent it was a strategic choice when he would kind of play the oh victim me. And I think we kind of let him. And then once we realized he was quote unquote the villain, I don't think any of us at that point prior to that game really thought of him as inherently villainous. I think he was just the most villainy. But
I don't think there was really a big villain on this season. I think
I think it was the poor me thing, right, Esme? Like he leaned into that.
I think like on this cast, to me, there's not a lot of villains. I had a lot harder time figuring out who I would write down for the hero because I felt like a lot of people were being really sweet. Then I think, who's the bitch? Who's the bitch? I couldn't figure, that was real hard for me to fucking figure out. I was like, well, I'll just write down Mike because he just turned on my ally, I guess, even though I don't really see him as a villain. Like, I think that was a move that also, like, it's also all in like context. Is it that villainous? What if we were able to see the full game, if this was an edited season of Survivor, would that be really considered villainous?
Cam hasn't got a chance to talk at all. Cam, do you want to say anything?
Yes,
He's just typing.
I've been politely waiting. So the way I see it is I feel like both Renique and Mike are complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Because like with Mike, I feel like he was too social to the point that he had so many deals, so many alliances with people that like he just got tangled into this web of having people obviously knowing that he's playing the middle. He did not hide it at all. And to the point that, of course, yes, people did get burned. Like, I got burned. I'm perfectly fine with that. Whereas with Renique, I feel like she didn't really talk much with a lot of people. Like, especially, like, there would be days in a row where Ren and I had not spoken at all. So, like, I kind of don't know where her game went, but I also realized that she had done something right. She played that under the radar game to get to the place that she is. I feel like there are a lot of pros and cons to both games. My vote is still like completely open. I'm willing to vote either way. I just want them to own their game. I want them to explain how they play and like explain their reasonings, explain their full thought process, and whoever does that the best will get my vote. I am leaning more towards Mike because I feel like I've seen his game more, but I am willing to hear the other side of the story.
One thing I will say about Renique, just real quick, because I just didn't get to touch on her at all. I want to say that I think from like how I played when I was a rookie, I feel like I attached to someone, right? Right away I attached to someone. I feel like that was Ren and Brooke. I feel like they got close when they did, you know? Like you said, Brooke, you guys talked for hours and hours. Me and Ren didn't talk, like literally like talk. I mean, besides saying, hey, how's your day? Until final 8. So I think it wasn't that she didn't want to talk or she chose not to talk to people. I think it was just a lot. It's a lot for your first game. And for when I was my first game, I chose willingly. I was like, I'm not talking to people unless I feel like they are my 100% ally because I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, I relied on a lot of people. I don't want to say she did rely on people because I'm not trying to say that, but I think she was able to have the few close allies instead of where a lot of us tried to talk to everybody, and we tried to make sure we had conversations going with everybody at all times and things like that. She didn't care. She's like, fuck it. I got my 3 people. I'm going to talk to my 3 people, and I'll cue in other people when those people are gone. Because like genuinely, me and her, our conversations were, what is the plan tonight? What are we thinking? How do you feel about this? Okay, good, bye. That was it. It was 5 sentences, no more, no less. So it's really hard for me to justify voting when there wasn't much. It really is hard, but I can also respect that because I've played that style of game too. So that's where it's up in the air for me with Rooney. But I mean, she did amazing. She did awesome. But it's just hard on the flip side because rookie season, she doesn't know how to play yet. She doesn't know how her style is going to play. So she had to play it out as she went and really figure it out for her first time, which is respectable too. On the same end, you know, I feel like it's a double-edged sword of respect, but also there were a few miscues and a few missteps where I feel like she was lacking, where it
It's
doesn't
funny,
feel
Max.
like a complete game.
It's funny, Max, that like a lot of what you say with like having 3 people and then like it moves and then bring someone else in as and when required. That sounds like you're describing kind of a strategic masterclass. Like I know you're not, and you're saying like you prefer a more open social game, and you think that she was kind of bumbling along a bit, but there's got to be some kind of credit that like take myself for example, or going back, take Brooke and Esme. You know, she had a relationship with them that burnt out when they both went. I
Oh
was
yeah,
in kind of at about the same time. She let me in, so it like does sound like a level of control where she's moved through, and her relationship with you, well, it
I
might have
just need
been,
her to own the
well,
control.
yeah,
That's my
sure.
biggest thing. I need her to own it. If she can't own it and can't sell her story on that she actually meant to do everything she did, I don't think I can give it to her. I think it's kind of a rookie made it to the end thing then. And
Yeah,
it's like
I think ironically both need to do the same thing here. Despite having very opposite games, they both need to own they knew what they're doing.
I don't even think that they need to own that they both knew what they were doing. For me, Renique needs to own the fact that she didn't talk to everybody all the time. She needs to own the fact that the game that she played was quieter and it was a lot more subtle. And if she owns that, I'll buy it. What Mike needs to do is own the fact that he made the moves that we know he did, and he needs to admit to the fact that it was ruthless. Because if he doesn't come in here and he doesn't say, I did this, I slit your throats, I slit a lot of your throats, and I don't feel bad about it. It was the game I played to make it to the end. I'm not voting for him. I can't justify voting for him when that's the game he played.
I know William had
Okay, y'all are going. I just had a question for y'all. I think a lot we're talking about like in concepts, right? So the concept of like playing the middle, going to one side, swimming with the water, the stream, as Sam said, like that kind of stuff. But I really want y'all to focus in on like what is one specific strategic move made by each finalist that impressed you the most and you think earns them the spot to be the winner in the end?
I mean, for me, the thing that impressed me with Renique was I don't think there was one specific move. I just kind of feel like it was the overall idea of this person is gone, I'm replacing them, and I'm moving on, right? If I'm gonna say one specific move, it was getting out Nick. Because I mean, Nick was a big threat. I recognized Nick as a big threat when I was still in the game, and I started mobilizing things to get him out at 9. Ultimately, it didn't pan out because I went home before that. But she got it done. I'm not saying she masterminded the whole flip, but she voted and she flipped to get him out when Nick wanted to work with her. To me, that shows she wasn't blindly loyal, and it also shows that she had a very strong perception of where people lied in the cast, and that helps me believe that it was intentional and it wasn't just rookie floating through the game.
Yeah.
When it comes to Mike, though, I don't know, because I feel like he did a lot of the same thing over and over again, and every time it worked to the same goal. I don't know what the one big one was, but I think every time he did it, it was effective. Obviously, maybe getting Max out. I think Max going was very good for him at the end of the day. I think if Max makes it to the end, I have a hard time not voting for Max against anybody, even Renique. So, like, maybe just getting Max out. I think that could have been his big thing, even if it was late into the game, that really helped him get here.
Homie wanted to be Piranha Strong in the finale. That's what he told me. He was all, I want to be Piranha Strong with you.
That's hilarious.
But I got to commemorate Scott too, though. I mean, he really pulled that off. But I also think it was smart for Mike to send it to fire making to tie it like he did, because it secured him. It locked him in. He didn't have to worry about nothing. He knew that when he tied that vote, he secured his spot in Final Three. The second he flipped on me and tied that vote, it was over. So like it's really hard to be like,
Yeah. I would say
I'm
the
not. It's
final
hard to be like mad, but not mad. I'm mixed. I've had a couple days to think about it, or a day or whatever it's been, and I was upset in the moment, of course, but like, damn, smart motherfucker, smart motherfucker. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I feel like they both made the right moves to get to the end. 100%. Like they both have their stories and they need to experience tribal council and prove that it wasn't just a game that made it to the end, but it was a game to get the votes at the end, because that's what matters at the end of the day.
A kind of follow up just to keep the conversation going. How do you feel that each finalist responded to different setbacks that they've received throughout the game? So whether they lost an ally or they lost the challenge, blindsided, how did they respond to that? And how do you think that plays into them getting to the end?
So I'm gonna have to go in just a second, so I'll respond to this and then head out. I don't really feel like Mike had that many setbacks, to be honest with you. After the swap, name me a setback Mike had in this game. Like again, it's impressive. Like I am impressed that he got it done in a game full of strategic thinkers and social players that controlled a lot and had a lot of control. He was the one that made it to the end. That's impressive. I don't think he had any setbacks. Renique, on the other hand, had a lot of setbacks. You know, in my opinion, I was probably her number one ally. I got voted out at 11th. Somebody that she wanted to work with long term, Esme, got voted out at 9th, 10th. How do you pivot from that and where do you go? And I think she did a really good job of that, of changing the course a little bit, making sure she wasn't the target. And I think it's hard to do. But I hope that they can both explain their games well at Tribal. I hope you guys have a great rest of your roundtable, but I have to go get cookout. So bye.
I mean, I feel like for Mike, just to kind of counter what Brooke had said, I mean, are we not recognizing the start of his game? He was on that original Piranha tribe with me and Cam where we lost 2 challenges right away. Then he got swapped onto a tribe where he lost another one of his original tribe mates. So he was the 1 out of 5 on a tribe, like he was all by himself. So what did he do? He had to weave his way in. So it's kind of like they both did the same thing. It's really hard to kind of point out their specific items because when you look at it, they're the parallel roads. One was just a little more talkative and one was under the radar. I feel like they were very parallel in their games. So I don't know if it's a thing we can discover right now. I really like Cam, and like a bunch of us have said, it's gonna depend on those speeches. I think any vote could go any way based on the final speeches.
If I can just put 2 cents in on that, having spoken to Scott in the last 24 hours, I don't want to speak for him, but what he is, well, sorry, first of all, to speak on Renique, I think the move on me, it sounds like she kind of was like right at the center of that. Scott told me that Renique was basically at the center of it. So that's something I would definitely say for her. If she had gone out pretty soon after, I would have said, looks like you shouldn't have moved on me so quick. But I think the outcomes justify the means, really. With Mike, what Scott said, basically, to paraphrase, is that Mike was pretty much always reactive to the plans that were being shown to him. So he played the middle well, but I'm not sure that there was much that he could own to call his own. Now, I'm not, saying that's one thing or another, but to answer William's question, I think if Scott were here, he would say that there wasn't that much in particular that Mike could own as his own. Whereas I think, from my understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected certainly by Sanam and Max, who were still there when I went, and Wesley, I should say. It sounds like Renique was pretty central to the votes coming on me at 7.
Oh, I was fully blindsided on that one. And then when I reached out to her, she said, I worked with you when it worked. Good luck. We did not talk again. She wasn't that icy because she generally wasn't very conversational. But I was like, gotcha. But I think like for me, Ren like knew when to talk. Like I didn't realize her and Esme were so close. And so when it came down to between her and Esme, you and I immediately were like, okay, Esme goes because I think she's a bigger threat. I had no idea. I think she was very strategic. So I think for me, like this is totally not the question that William asked, but I'm going to answer it anyways because it's the one I want to. But it was for me, it's Ren's a new player. I've been in her shoes about like a month ago. At a certain point, you kind of figure out where people see you and you lean into it to some extent, you lean back to some extent. She was doing well in challenges. She was forming in relationships that set her up for success. I want to know at what point it stopped being, this is how the game is happening around me and how I'm manipulating the game. It was sometime before the Nick vote for sure. And I just want to know what that point was because I see it in the way that people talk about it. And for Mike, I mean, I would argue that like the reason he immediately got kind of in was like, I was definitely the pioneer behind the Stephanie vote, and I feel a little bit bad about it, but I was so tired. I hadn't slept. Stephanie pitched a name, and I was like, you don't have a reason to pitch a name. We're all here trying to dialogue. So I went into everybody's VC. I was like, I'm tired. I'm voting Stephanie. Do with it what you will. And I immediately went to Mike and was like, hey, not trying to ice you out here. You're not just like next on my hit list. And then he leaned into that. So at what point was it, I feel like I'm the victim and I'm being reactive versus I'm going to play the victim and be reactive because that's what's going to get people to reassure me and tell me things. I think both of them to some extent had it happen and to some extent lean into it. So for both of them, the question I want answered is at what point did it become a strategic choice? Because I see that
I will say every round I played with Mike, every round it was, oh my God, I'm going tonight. I'm so nervous. I'm going to be the vote. I'm so nervous. It's going to happen. There's no way it's not me. Everyone hates me. Da 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 da. And I'm like, dude, you're like, stop spiraling. You're fine. But I think it was, right? I don't think it was like, I think it was on purpose. I think it was intentional. Mm-hmm. There's no way that it would be that repetitive every round, that hard. Like, and I was nervous every round, of course. Of course I got nervous every round, but I wasn't like going off every round. I think he played it and he did overplay it a little bit, but he overplayed it just long enough to where it worked in his favor.
Okay, I'm saying he's done that before.
No, literally, because last game I played, I would play it off like I was paranoid the entire time, but I really wasn't. Maybe it was a ploy. Like, it very well could have been.
Okay, so it seems like, just to get a general vibe of what we talked about, because I had like a little recap of Renique a bit earlier, but I guess the impression of Mike here is that, you know, he seemed to be playing the middle, but a bit too obviously so, like very much a very overt strategic threat. And from a political standpoint, was in a position to where he was often kind of the swing vote making these decisions. The problem was how he presented and conducted himself. Like there's a question of like how deliberate he was in playing up to paranoia, if that was even a ploy, and he genuinely was this paranoid all the time. And now there's also some parallels that are appearing between Renique and Mike as well, with Mike being, I guess, a bit more out in front and being a bit more boisterous than Renique, at least from a strategic standpoint. Or Renique is a little bit under the radar, a little bit more, not to say passive, but I do think under the radar is the best comparison, is what I've gathered thus far from the jury roundtable here. So I guess I kind of wanted to just get a quick show of hands, just to, before we delve a little bit, maybe a little bit deeper, maybe potentially wrap this up soon. Just show of hands. I'm gonna describe not necessarily a scenario, but let's say if this pertains to you. Raise your hand if you're 50-50, completely undecided, like either or. Speeches, anything notwithstanding, you can be swayed. Raise your hand if you're slightly leaning towards one of the finalists, but the other one can realistically earn your votes. Raise raise your hand if you're decided. Like, raise your hand if like you do not know what the other finalists could do to convince you to vote for their opponent or maybe lose your vote. But okay. So see, there was a decent spread. A lot more people are. Well, honestly, I respect the honesty because I definitely bet. Whereas Maze, I was like, I know what the hell I'm voting for. Don't waste
I
my money.
think I'm in between the last two. I think I'm not slightly, I think it's like 80-20. So
Gotcha.
it's hard. It's going to be hard for this
Yeah,
other,
same.
but like, because it's not like 50-50 or 50 or 40-60. It's like definitely the weights are on one side, but if this other person can pick them up and move them, it could be swayed, but it's going to be an uphill battle for that person. I don't want to say who. Because
I would
that's a secret I'll never tell. Shh.
I'd agree with Esme. That's pretty much where I put myself. I think it's disrespectful to the jury process and to the game to go into an FTC with your vote decided.
All I know is I'm writing down William's name to win.
Yeah, it's got to be William. I think.
I came in late, but
I will
really
admit I
excited so
have
far.
a pre-vote written down just in case for some reason I'm gonna come with tomorrow on vote day, just like paranoia. So production has my thoughts going in more or less.
Yeah. So Wesley, don't forget it's 2 L's IAM.
It's Will I Am. Yeah.
Yes.
Not
Yeah,
the not
I
the
think
let
you're
her
right.
know.
I know what I want to hear from each of them. I definitely like, I would say I'm very 50-50 because it so hinges on what they own and what they say and what they enlighten for me tomorrow. But I also think that's not how I use enlighten. I use that word wrong. I feel silly. But anyways, what they can like explain to me tomorrow. But I think like I have my preconceived notions of the games they both played, both from being in game and then being in the jury chat and then this call. I have an idea of whose game is likely to get my vote, but I don't want to discount the fact that I know there's more that I don't know. And so I still say 50-50 because like there's so much that come out in those speeches that could change my vote. And I don't think I know enough to make up my mind even to the 80-20 point.
Okay. I don't have any. Oh, I have one more question, technically speaking, and then I guess I just wanted to ask before I ask this, William, if you had anything else that you wanted to ask the jury.
I was gonna ask what everyone's favorite compliment to me would be, but I'll save that for another time.
That'll be post round
My
table.
favorite compliment to you is you're not my least favorite winner.
I'm just sharing my cats with you guys. Here's my compliment to you. Look at the baby.
Oh, hello, baby.
Hi, honey. Can you not get on the shelf, honey? You eat my plants. Come here. Your auntie will be mad at you. Get down. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm not muted.
It's all good. Okay. There's one more thing I want to do with the jury before we end the jury roundtable, and we're gonna go in juror order, I guess, like technically by placement. All I just want to ask is because you guys are all gonna have your designated time during the FTC to ask both of the finalists questions. Maybe some of you have those prepared, maybe some of you don't, and maybe this roundtable has been the opportunity for you to kind of get an idea of like maybe I should ask that when it's my turn. So I'm gonna go over each juror. I'm gonna say your name, and you're just gonna tell me, generally speaking, what you need to hear from these finalists. Like how, not like step by step on how they get your vote, but what do you need to hear to be most satisfied, so to speak? The first person, the earliest juror we have here is Esme. So Esme, take the floor.
God damn it. Early out. I think for me, both of them are gonna have to kind of own up to what they did or what they didn't do. If it's that, if it was kind of by happenstance and luck, own up to that too. Like I want to just them to be honest about their game and not beat around the bush. I also want them to tell me what their favorite song on the Brat album is, because that will also help me choose the winner.
So real. Cam?
All right. For me, like quite literally the same. I want to hear like them own their shit. I've been saying this like ever since like this whole week. Like I want to hear them own their shit. Like with Ren, I want to hear like if like the not talking to people was strategic and if like the reasonings behind doing so, if it is. And like if it's strictly like with for Mike, I want to hear him own the fact that like he did stab people in the back and that he was playing this game like strategically hard pretty much.
All right, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're going to get a lot of answers on the theme of self-awareness, but I want to hear what, how each of these two see themselves at Final Tribal, and why that vision, why that kind of character deserves to win a game of Survivor.
Rabbit. I've been messing up your name all season. I'm so sorry. I'm like,
Oh, I was just gonna sit here and let you say it. Go ahead and try.
no, I don't. I've got this. I'm scared.
It's okay. Here, we're gonna have a class for 2 seconds. Sun am. Sun like the sun in the sky. Am like will I am. Sun am. We've got this, and it's okay. I totally get it, especially when you read it for the most part. Class dismissed. My question. Wait, go for it. No, Jacob, do it.
You got this. You got this.
No. I said Sanam.
10 out of 10.
I was gonna butcher it intentionally and say name or like just something.
I do that to people if I teach them my name and they butcher it. I'll be like, oh, hi, Jacob. And I'll just keep doing it. I'll just keep messing up people's names until they learn it. But I also
like Padam, like the Kylie Minogue song. I read it like that.
Padam.
Yeah. I was like,
the name's
Were you made that my theme song? Because I made all my friends listen to it after the VL from CTC decided that was my song. But I think for me, my question for each of them, I'm gonna have two. My questions are 1,000% going to change about 99 times between now and FTC. But I think right now, when did you like start to see the strategic path to where you're at and like lean into it? And what was that? Because at a certain point, you're just kind of figuring it out. And I want to know when it became strategy and like what those choices were. And then I think too is like, what's a regret you have in this game? Because I want to know like something you did, not something that happened to you. Because like if you've been proud and like 100% confident in 100% of the choices you made, you're a liar. I'm so sorry. I don't believe it from anyone. So I want to know at what point like, ooh, maybe that wasn't the move, and then how they pivoted from that. Because I think I want to know what the strategic logic was in a lot of the decisions that got them to where they are.
Great question, Sonom.
Leslie, you're up.
Nike.
Clothing thoughts?
Yeah.
Basically, my core takeaway here is they are extreme opposites, but they need to do the same thing. They need to show awareness that what they did of their game, own what they did, and what they did was deliberate.
All right. And last, we have Max.
I want to know. Well, I guess it's kind of obvious. I think I know why Mike flipped on me, but like I kind of want to know. And then I want to know if Ren would have brought me to the end, or how their end game would have played out if I would have made Final 3.
All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Because everyone else is going to ask what I already wanted to ask, so I'll come up with something new.
Actually, I'm going to ask that when that comes to my question. What would you have done if Max had made Final 3?
You fucker.
Every time Max comes up with a new question, the juror after Esme will then just steal that.
Oh, yes.
Sounds like a plan.
Max, do us a favor and put it in the chat.
Let's plan it.
Like a list.
I'll type out a bunch for everybody. I'll hook y'all up. All right. I'll lay out a plan. My
and then
agenda
Max,
for the night.
question, it's like, which Five Nights at Freddy character do you relate to the most?
Shit.
What's your favorite color and why is it blue?
Well, I just
cheating. One of the sons.
Rock, paper, or scissors.
Lizard Spock.
That too.
Thanks for coming to dinner with me, guys.
For real. Well, the Big Bang Theory aside, I do want to thank you guys all again for taking time out of your day to obviously attend this jury roundtable. This has been very informative, and I've hosted quite a few games. I'm on prod for maybe 3, maybe 4 games at this moment. Both Survivor and Big Brother in there as well. And I don't think I've seen a jury so 50-50. Like, yes, there are some people leaning one way over the other, but I feel like the pros and cons were both equally weighed between both finalists, which hopefully makes this FTC super competitive. I mean, I won in a jury vote of 5-4. That's as close as a jury of 9 could get with making their decision. And I've definitely served plenty of juries as well playing these games. And hell, I've even voted for one of y'all who's in the Zoom to win a game before. And I think just my biggest philosophy going into FTC is aiming to vote for someone to win and not against someone so that they lose. So ultimately, obviously, you guys experienced these people face in a way to where I did not. Obviously, as a production member, there's definitely a different level of bias. I saw everything unfold right in front of me, as you 7 or 6 did not. And so you have your own personal experiences, your own personal perceptions about how these people, how these two played the game and how you personally interacted with them, how genuine or authentic of a connection that is. So it's much easier said than done. But ultimately, I hope you guys can vote for the person you'd be happiest to see win. And not because you're more angry or you're more disappointed by the other opponent, but because you genuinely think the person you're voting for deserves to win this game. So I'll just leave you with that. Again, thank you guys so much for having us here. But thank you, William, for coming in. And of course, on Wednesday, you will be handing the crown. You'll be passing the torch, if you will. Will they be a better winner than you? Don't know. That's to be seen this season. But because everyone's saying they're voting for William, which makes me believe that everyone's in agreement with that. But that being said, thank you guys so much. I don't know if William, you had anything else to close us off on, but
Fuck you, Esme. Fuck
What did I
you.
What I do? What I do?
Well,
Bye all.
That's voting me out, you hag.